Yes, it's true. We're back again with another edition of Kelly and Company. On today's show, unlocking stories, one voice at a time. Stephen Vine brings us his newly released podcast, The Disability Diaries. Also today on the show, protein gets all the hype, but that's what happens when you're a celeb. But fiber is the real MVP. Chef Mary Mammoliti has 5 high-fiber pantry staples. Say that over and over again. You'll stumble at the third one for sure if you get through the first. These are ones you need to stock up on, folks. Your gut will thank you for it. Lots for us to lend our voice to on today's show, so stick around.
This is Kelly and Company.
You know, you can find our content out on YouTube. Find the Kelly and Company page. Subscribe to it if you would. There's all sorts of great content we throw out there, including the audio vanity cards, the show itself, and some segments. Enjoy, please, and always let us know that you're there. Always love to hear from you. We'll give you out some of our contact a little later on. Kelly MacDonald on Election Day in Ontario. Try to get out, try to do your voting, try to do all the right things, and put the government in place that you'd like to have in place, since we've got so much volatility and so much going on these days. But I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to say, hey, you got to get out there and vote. But I do want to remind you, it is our right to do so, and pretty important. Then once you do that, you can complain all you want about the government that actually gets in, because you know the first question you're going to be asked by people, did you vote? And you can say, I certainly did. And under your breath, it's not my fault the ballot got spoiled, or I voted for the so-and-so party that might have got 4 votes and everything. But yes, indeed, I voted. I welcome in Christine Malec now to join us. How are you, Chris?
Hello. 5 high-fiber pantry staples. 5 high-fiber pantry staples. 5 high-fiber pantry staples. I'm well. How are you, Kelly?
And 3 you get. Ding, ding. She does it. How much practicing were you doing? Did I stall long enough?
I didn't hear a word you said. No, I'm just kidding. Voting.
I didn't think so.
I know.
Okay.
I pre-voted. The advanced polls, man, that's the way to go. Yeah.
Did you have accessibility at it too?
I was with a sighted friend, and to be honest, this is terrible, but I just went, can my friend just do the thing? And they said yes, because it's so spotty every time that I just, yeah. So, do
I was asking,
do what you do.
I was asking the question the other day, when would you say you first took politics serious? At what age?
I voted as soon as I could. I don't know why, but I knew early on that I can't say I voted in municipal all the time until I was probably in my 30s or 40s. But voting federally for sure, and provincially, I did take it pretty seriously. In fact, this time I went there was 4 of us, and one of them was 18, voting for her first time. It mattered way more to us than to her. She didn't give a crap.
but it's so that right.
Bored.
Yes, but it's that right. That's the thing. Do they do it in school though? Do they know anything, or are they just saying eeny, meeny, miny, mo?
Well, hopefully you've got a parent helping you to understand the issues. But I call voting a privilege, not a right, because there are people in the world who fight for it, and there are people in the world, like women, who are about to lose it. So I don't even call it a right anymore. I say it's a privilege, and if you don't exercise it, you're not thinking too clearly. In my opinion, I have strong feelings about it, no doubt.
Yeah, I was raised that way. I mean, when I was a kid, I knew so much more about politics than the average 20, 25-year-old would. And again, when people are in college and stuff, I get there's so much in their minds. There's so much they're doing. This stuff doesn't necessarily be on the radar. But I always found it very interesting as a kid. I found the news media stuff, which as probably a media person in general, that would interest me. But I was lucky enough to really find Justin Trudeau's father, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, absolutely fascinating. Even after he was in office, that guy to me, outside of my father, was that person that if he had said, Kelly, jump, I would have said, how high, sir? How high? He was just great to me with personality.
I loved his directness. Like, I'm not going to do the gesture, but he'll give the gesture, and we need some of that right now. I would love to see our lovely Justin's. He's a fine fellow. I'd love to see him do that. but it's,
Yeah, well,
it is what it
he's
is.
not his father, and I think
He's
that's the
not his
thing. And
father, and
times
that's
have
fine.
changed, and it
Yep.
is, because there's so many of those things that now we'd say you don't do that, and well, maybe some politicians out there do, but no. Chris, let's get into something that we really love. We talk about, and I think it's a privilege here that we have it. Even as you speak of the word privilege, audio description for live events is ever evolving. And let's get into a conversation here about how AD is offered and some of the preferences that are out there that we each have. We welcome our arts consultant, Christine Malec, to the table. Chris, if somebody has not ever experienced description at a live event, how might it work?
Most of the time, what will happen is we're talking about something like a play or a dance performance. And so, what will happen is, of course, this has to be all agreed to and paid for and facilitated by the theatrical company and the theater itself. So, as the consumer, you would enter, you would have registered beforehand. You would either get a dedicated little audio device with a headphone jack, or there'd be an app on your phone. And during the performance, and well, it would start before the performance, there's usually some what they call pre-show notes. And so that's maybe about 10 minutes of an audio describer telling you things about the theater itself, what it looks like, but also things about the performers and the performance that there might not be time for during the show. So you'd get physical descriptions of the actors and some stuff about sets and maybe some things about how the action is carried out. And then during the performance, what you would get is same as in a movie or TV. Between dialogue, you would have an audio describer who's live. They're sitting in a sound booth at the back of the theater somewhere, and they're speaking live. So they've done a lot of prep. They've probably seen the performance once or twice. They've done a ton of research. They've hopefully had a chance to talk to the performers a bit. And so they know more or less what to expect. And they are giving you live audio description of the performance. And so they they will also be able to sort of ad lib, telling you when things change. Like if the audience laughs unexpectedly, they'll be able to help you understand why that's happening. So that's what audio description would be like at most live events that are described.
So I'm going to get into some history with this. Now, I did some work with the Stratford Festival. You have been a consultant in it when it comes to shows individually and different experiences. We've lent our ears, our knowledge, our life experience to try to croon these, to make them better. And I know before Stratford really rolled out the wonderful program that the Stratford Festival currently has, we focus so hard on how much, how little, when to do the timing. What should the procedure be, as you mentioned, the time that the describer spends watching the play, writing out the script and knowing it for those key moments, for those times, but also being ready for anything that can happen. And then you add later on touch tours, you add some of the things like you said, that description that is there, little notes that people may or may not use. It has been ever evolving. And we're just talking, you and I, at the moment, well, I guess I am really, live theater, but we know there's other venues that hope, including live sports and other things that you and I can think of that are out there touring through museums, where we always see this stuff ever growing. I don't think I've ever used an app, for example, to do any of this. Where do you feel, over the history as we looked at, as I just kind of went over the things, what do you think has been the most growth or the most important thing? Is it those notes? Is it the actual during show description? And when I say that, it's obviously all important, but is there something for you that leads the way?
Um, I might almost answer to that the innovation, because as you say,
Yeah.
it's evolving. And so, for example, one iteration of live description that was really fun was the Toronto Pride Parade was sometimes live described, and that was not an earbud in your ear. That was usually JJ Hunt on a loudspeaker with a megaphone talking like so everyone could hear, and that was a completely new way for me. And another example of innovation is that there the Disability Collective in Toronto is starting to do this, where before a show that's upcoming, they will expand the pre-show notes into a whole podcast episode. So you can listen like a week before and get a really deep dive into, maybe the 10 minutes of what a pre-show notes might have, but also uh, exploring some of those ideas and giving background, like, okay, you're going to say this is a rural landscape. Well, let's break that down. What does that actually mean? So, and there's different apps and different technologies that are being used, and there's conversations that are ongoing about how, say, to describe dance. And so what I would say is that the most important feature or function of live description at this point is the innovation, that nothing is locked in, and there are still active conversations going on, active processes about how can we do this differently, how can we do this more deeply, how can we do this in a way that's more meaningful and rich and accessible. So, if you couldn't attend the Rocky Horror Picture Show last Halloween, you can still, even today, you can go to the Disability Collective podcast page and listen to the pre-show notes, and you'll learn a ton of stuff about Rocky Horror. And so those, I'd say innovation is the most important thing in the field right now.
Do you count and want to talk a little bit, since you mentioned JJ, and we know JJ gets out, does tours. We've been on these tours with JJ and experiences. I feel that was almost the landmark. I mean, as much as I've known JJ for years, and he did a lot of audio description, script writing for content that AMI was putting out years ago, before kind of we were where we are now. But going on a walking tour with JJ, these things that we miss so much of, and I know we can talk in a theater, wow, I don't have a clue what's going on during dance, and I'm kind of curious if there's an area that we should focus on. Not more, but we always have to make choices when it comes to deciding how many shows are going to be described, which shows may, in some places, are the ones we're going to put that money into. And I think some would say, well, if you can only do description for 3 out of the 5 shows this season, maybe you need to put your money on the musical or the one that has the least dialogue, or maybe partially in another language. I don't know. I think that's all up for debate because we want it all. But I always feel that landmark for live stuff started with those walking tours, and at some of those darn museums that were giving you something to pick up, put in your ear. And this is a picture of. Am I wrong, Chris?
I actually don't know too much about how description of live events kind of got rolling. I know JJ talks about having described the Pan Am Games in Toronto, the Paralympic Pan Am Games that were in Toronto many years ago. So that's the earliest iteration I know of. But you mentioned the problem of, okay, which performances are we going to describe? It costs money to do it right, and how are we going to, decide? And there's an interesting innovation going on here with something called GalaPro, and it's what Mirvish is doing. It's their answer to audio description. So instead of having a live describer in the theater on, say, one night out of a 10-night run, their performances are so big and epic and one might almost say standardized, that they have a standard description. So my partner went to The Lion King recently in Toronto, and it was using this app. So it's the description's already been done because the show is so predictable. Like the show usually looks the same, that you log on to the app and you're getting a description feed that is not live, but is sort of keeping pace. Like, I think it's using your microphone a bit to make sure it's in pace with the show, because he said sometimes a description might get cut off by a new description. So the advantage of that, well, there's lots of disadvantages, but the advantage is that you can pick your show. You can decide what show you go to. You're not constrained by the one show out of the whole run that's audio described. So it does have its advantages and disadvantages, but it's an example of where, different ways that companies are trying to get this work done and in place for us.
I think about, and I have arguments with people on AI and what it's going to do to audiobooks and things like that. We're narrators, the job of narrators. And you look at something like this and the potential, because why should you have to choose 3 out of the 5 plays that your theater group is running for this season? You want to be able to find a way to do all 5, and something like this could really be that way, especially if it's picking up on Christine delivering the line, well, I've had enough, I'm leaving. And it knows Christine leaves the room. and George picks up his coat to follow. If these are important, obviously cues, things, and how you could do that using AI and technology, what it simply means is there could be more shows done, more actual shows to attend. Every show in a run could actually have, hey, here's your headset, here's what you need with your device, away you go.
It's true. AI, we could, I think maybe next month I'll talk about AI because there's so much to talk about with this tool. And I really think that's not far away because if an AI has the script, it knows the story arc. And
Yes.
that's sort of the essential for an audio describer because they have to decide which things are going to be described. And in order to know what's important, you have to know the story arc. And if AI, they're sort of dabbling at describing video now, so actiony parts instead of just a photograph. And so I do think that that's not far off. And I don't think it's the death of audio description because, to my mind, what it does is it frees up a describer, a human describer, to become an artist rather than
Yes.
merely a craftsperson. So we can do the deep dives, we can do the pre-show notes, we can do the what is a rural landscaper. When someone says, she dances provocatively, okay, well, let's break it down. And so it potentially a lot of people are like creeped out and uncertain, but it's coming either way, whether we like it or not. And so I'm really interested in the ways that describers can leverage that and turn it into an advantage so that describers can do work that's maybe actually much more interesting and engaged than just talking into a microphone.
Yeah, I mean, something predictable like The Lion King, okay, but and I know you can make any show almost down to time. I mean, obviously sitting there with a time-stamped way or cues that can be picked up on by audio to fire off the next description track is really the way to go at this point as we see it. But you still, as you say, need the work of that, whether that narrator writes that script, narrates it, the multiple voices until we get AI taking that over in that sense as well. You're still, when it comes to live, going to need a lot of those elements. And of course, if you're walking around doing a walking tour, doing a live sporting event and adding description, you can't put that ahead. You can't prepare that. But what I love about the idea of doing shows obviously is how many shows can be available. Any one of them. You don't have to pick the described performance. I love the fact that you could do all the shows in a theater company's yearly repertoire. I love the fact that you could literally economically make this available for any small community theater group that doesn't have a lot of money, broadening the availability instead of saying, well, shouldn't your group have this show and audio description? Look, man, we just break even doing the show.
Yeah.
We take a loss for everything. This is just to get volunteers out here a chance to do community theater. This can really take some of that away and be something that is a cost with updates to it and stuff like that. Hey, sure, you're getting your people to write it or one of your actors to voice it and so on. But what availability, Chris, and what possibilities?
It's true. And perhaps not ironically, in my experience, it's been the small theater companies who are barely breaking even,
Yes.
who have been the trailblazers in bringing audio description. I mean, there's been lots of justified grousing about people like Mervish because they took forever to get anything. And what they did get is a choice that's different from what the small companies made. But honestly, my experience, 100%, it's the small companies just barely scraping to get by who have the values of inclusivity. And that's who's led the way in my experience of live description in theater.
Well, I've heard our Grand Theatre here in London get called out for it because they make choices in where they're going to be accessible and where they're not. And at this time, audio description is not where they feel they should be accessible. They don't worry about, well, how many customers potentially are you losing because you won't venture down that road yet, but you feel good because your latest renovations, make it a little easier and you've widened the bathroom door and put a different door on there for different types of power chairs, which is important too. Very important, of course. But why, when this is an option that you could do, but you're saying, well, we'll pick to choose these first and never really know until we finally get it done how many customers we are turning away because we don't have something that is easy to do. We can't be bothered. So it's a choice, and I don't want to pick on the Grand Theatre. Many other theaters are in that position, and I know 100% about the economic challenges, but I also know when said little community theater troupe is trying to make something possible by having Fred in the corner, telling what's going on audio description wise and which show to go to, and the actors are willing to do that and have that disruption, then that's how so much started, along with different other types of performances such as Relax. You have these efforts being made, and you hope the big guns start making some more of these efforts and seeing that value and getting greedy enough to want my money from my wallet, and treating me as a blind person the same as any other customer. You know what I was going to say. Don't you want my blind money? But we'll leave it at that.
Well, it's unfortunate because our dollars are minimal, and statistically our participation is low. And so I often am amazed that there is as much live description as there is, because it's a big process for a describer. Doesn't just stroll in the door and do the thing. Like, it takes hours and hours and hours and hours of prep and research and consultation to do it well, to do it properly. So it's got to be a numbers game for theaters, and I'm completely sympathetic with that, because accessibility spreads, and a ramp, I could see that. I could see the argument that says a ramp is potentially going to benefit more people than audio description, and I can't argue with that. And I don't know what the answer is, but maybe it's AI, because maybe that'll make it cheaper. Yeah.
And I think we'll see as that goes on, making it cheaper, because you can't zero in on all these small little town theaters. And I'm not talking to ones that have festivals and people go to them, like Blythe and some of the other ones like that. Good for you guys. It's wonderful. But I'm talking about that little community theater in Woodstock, Ontario, or somewhere out there, in Picture Butte or something like that. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
As always, getting some great conversation. And for us, the way to get more description delivered the way that we want is to let planners know. So I go on about the Grand Theatre, pick up the phone, call your theaters, and get after them and say, this is what we need. We'll talk to Christine Malec in a couple of weeks here with more as we get discussing the arts. So I got a little article I want to go over here before we bring in our next guest. Researchers test genetically edited citrus tree that controls insects that are responsible for greening. This is by Brad Buck. Scientists at the University of Florida are testing a new type of citrus tree that can fight off the tiny insects responsible for citrus greening. While the genetically edited tree has only been tested so far in the lab, in the greenhouse, it is one of the most promising discoveries today for this challenge that has plagued growers, researchers, and consumers as Florida's citrus industry has plummeted over the past 2 decades. Now, I remember growing up, that's all we talked about is Florida oranges and some of the problems that we have no idea of, the demand that's called upon. You can imagine that, hey, you start losing so much of the crop. This is a tight margin, man. And then we get upset, as we know. Prices go up, and prices right now don't need any excuse to go up. The approach involves inserting a gene into a citrus tree that produces a protein that can kill the baby silices, the bugs that transmit the greening disease. While this approach can kill the baby bacillus, scientists are trying to find some way to control the adult pests. They're trying to deploy a biotechnical solution that is sustainable, easier for growers to deploy, and replaces the need for spraying insecticides, said Lucas Stalinsky, an entomologist professor. I get that too. I mean, I think of them spraying here for the moths, the gypsy moths over London, and they got to do that. They've got to pick the area where they think it's going to be the worst. And we're talking moths, not even something so small as these little bugs creating the greening. But it would be nice to not put all of us in jeopardy, spraying onto something we're going to eat, or just having this stuff in the air. They must prove that this method works in the field, and we're still a few years away from reaching that conclusion, Lucas says. They hope to begin testing the trees in about a year. So I like it. It's interesting when you think about that. And one of those problems that's hidden from us, that we probably should be a little aware of, see the efforts being made, because we're most concerned with darn well how much money these things cost. Email us, ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions, comments about the show, kellyco@ami.ca, and you can give us a call at 1-866-509-4545. Always love to hear from you, whether it's your voice or a comment about the show, negative, positive. Help us grow the show, help us get better, and please keep consuming the content. Some diaries are not meant to be kept under lock and key, and Stephen Vine is the man asking the questions that get community folks to spill the tea in his recently released podcast, the Disability Podcast. Stephen, welcome to Kelly and Company. Glad to have you on board.
Glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me part of Kelly and Co. today.
Thank you very much. Okay, tell us about who you are, Stephen. I'm kind of curious where you come from and your background.
My background is I'm slowly going to be entering my 60s, and I've spent my whole life out here in British Columbia, Vancouver. I spent 35 years in the restaurant hospitality industry, serving the rich. I was always serving, managing, and owning fine dining Italian restaurants, and taking care of movie stars and rock stars and all that kind of people in society. When I was younger, I was quite an athlete. I won the Canadian National Championships for 800 meters when I was a teenager in New Brunswick. And I was working 8.5 years ago, and I had a medical catastrophe. I had a AAA, which is abdominal aortic aneurysm, and suddenly became catastrophically disabled with multiple problems. And I got into technology once I was disabled, and I was struggling along, trying to learn as much as I can about what was going on in our world, and being so happy that I'm part of technology. And I kept saying to myself, I can do this. I can do a podcast. I've talked to people my whole life, and I know I can do this. And then I got involved, a couple of people that had love and care for me and wanted to see if maybe my project could get off the ground. And there's 4 of us now collectively doing this project, and it's pretty unbelievable. I love what I'm doing, and man, am I sure learning a lot about the disabled community. Like, the individuals involved are so impressive and so interesting, and so many overachievers, and so inspiring,
Oh, beautiful. Steve, we're going to get into some of that in a few minutes, but I want to step back to the medical emergency.
Yes.
Coming awake in the hospital, learning what's going on, and how much your life has changed due to this catastrophic, happening, which comes out of nowhere for people. You're a person active who's had such a wonderful life, and I'm gonna phrase this in this sense, Stephen, probably with the things that you were able, once you learned about your disability. I'm kind of looking at the timeline of finding out, moving on with life, having the means because of your wonderful life that you've had, of being involved and the work that you've done. I'm going to assume, and you correct me if I'm wrong if you choose to, it's really none of my business, but that you had means to be able to venture out and do some things that I'm sure some of the guests that you've had on the show will say, hey, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. You've learned different things as you've been so fascinated by the people. But could you give me a little bit of that timeline for you of acceptance of, hey, I can get to this point, those darker days and the struggles?
Well, when my medical situation arose, my personal life was a little bit in disorder. And, I was in a coma for 3 weeks and came to, and the first question I said was, why are the lights out? I can hear all these voices. And, well, the lights aren't off. They're on. Oh, really? And then, I say all this in my first episode of the Disability Diaries with Stephen Vine. I talk about all of these events that happened, and I'm lying in my hospital bed, and I put my hand down, and I feel my right leg, and it doesn't quite feel the same, and I get informed that the doctors want to amputate it and take it off because it's going rotten. because
Right.
of what's happened to me. And then I move my hand over a little bit towards my stomach, and I feel a bag on my stomach, and I say to my partner at the time, "What is this?" "Oh, you've had an ostomy. You can't use the toilet anymore." Not to be too graphic, but you can't use the toilet anymore. And so all of this was trying to be processed within minutes, literally.
Yes. Yes.
And, I went from A to Z instantly. And I'll never forget it. And I'm not sure if you ever get over it, I think I have, but it's so crazy that it's really hard to explain to people unless you're really in that situation,
For
which
sure.
I hope any of your listeners never experience. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. But, the years went by, and a huge word, and I've said it in my podcast, is the word acceptance. And
Okay.
everybody in life has to accept things that they don't want to. And that's a real learning curve for all of us, And sometimes things are put upon us that we just don't want to accept. But, in order to go forward, you have to.
Yeah.
And
And you have to get to where it becomes normacy, don't you?
yeah,
Your new
like I
normal.
said, it's over 8 years for me. I'm approaching 9 years of my new world. I'm going to be 9 years old, so to speak, in July. And this is kind of the first time, Kelly, that I'm starting to feel normal again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and
And
I'm
we'll,
not waking up every day and going, "Man, I'm blind today."
yeah. Yeah.
I'm waking up and I am blind, and it's just there, and let's get rocking and rolling in our day,
You bet. So that makes me say, so podcast, which started last fall, yes, you decided to do this. You have 4 people that are all involved in what you're doing to make this happen. And as we talk, you can give details, but I know people can go check out the podcast. I want to know how you decided, once I'm going to do this podcast, this is what I need to have in my first few episodes. Walk us through that, because I know for a lot of people who have ideas, thoughts, I'd like to do a podcast, that has got to be the biggest challenge, to say, how do I start? Where do I start? What do I need to share? What don't I need to? What do people want to hear? What the heck do they not?
Well, when you work in the restaurant business, you're under a lot of stress to serve the public. And I knew that if I was going to start this project, I didn't want to be really under a lot of stress to do it.
Yep.
So what my first sort of strategy, I like to use that word, my strategy was to record episodes and put them in the bank so that I had a buffer, and that I didn't have to rush around and say, my podcast, The Disability Diaries with Stephen Vine, is released every 14 days on Sunday at midnight. I didn't want to have 6 hours to record an episode and get it out for the public.
Yes.
I wanted to have them in the bank so I could chill. Every time we do anything in life relaxed, we do it better. And so I wanted to have that relaxation. And again, to use the word strategy, I decided to work off with the people I knew in the disabled world, my caregivers, the people that loved me, that were supportive, my doctors, people I knew with their disabilities, and start building one brick at a time with these individuals that, I knew in my inner circle already. And that's exactly what happened. And then things became into fruition as far as expanding and building the walls up with these bricks of, I know this person that knows this person, and I know this person that knows that person. And now, I've recorded 26 episodes, 13 have been released since September, and I've got 13 in the bank that I can basically say, which one is the right time to release this one. And there's no pressure, and everyone now that's involved, I've never really known it all because
Nice.
I've gone through my inner circle. Does that make
Yeah.
any sense?
It's totally sense. And almost the show gets programmed by who starts knowing. Maybe you don't know the person, but so-and-so says, you know what I saw? You know who I know? I think, Stephen, too many are out there saying, so if you worked in the restaurant business, why didn't you do a business pocket? Why didn't you take some of the celebrities, the people that you may have met over the years? That would be tempting for a lot of people. But this sounds like, as this idea formed, you had a direction that you knew you wanted to go and do and not be followed up, or as some people would be tempted to say, well, I know such and such and so, they'd be really good to get on my podcast. And then you ask yourself, to talk about what? What's new? What's different?
You know, what the head makes cloudy, the heart makes clear. And I was listening to my heart, and my intuition was, this is my new world now. My hospitality experience was what I used to do.
Okay.
I don't cook like I used to. I just don't like burning myself. And I love cooking. And I love eating. It's one of my true passions, is to sit down and eat. And you know, I wanted to go in a new direction with my new world. It's that simple. And I'm glad I made this decision, because I've been there, done that with the hospitality gigs, you know, and
Yes.
now everyone that I'm meeting is literally new and adding more spice to the recipe of life now.
Beautiful, Stephen. This is great. Okay, let's talk about the podcast and make sure we get people, when they finish the show here, they're subscribing to it. Let's talk about guests. Have you had some that you would say favorite? I know they're all wonderful interviews, conversations. Is that what we're tuning into? We tune in, we learn about you, and then is subsequently the people, the resources of, hey, this person knows this person, let's bring them on. They've got an interesting story. What, as a listener, should we expect?
I think the listener can expect a focused, eclectic look at the disabled world. So
Ooh, love that.
I've had individuals say to me, you know, it kind of seems like the only rhyme or reason you have is that everyone's in the disabled world. And I'm like, that's exactly what I want. I don't want to have doctor after doctor after doctor, blind after blind after blind. I want doctor, blind, amputation, developmental disabilities, and so on and so forth, so that it's all over the board. So you're hearing different angles of what this world is so vastly about.
Yep.
And so one of my favorite episodes is Marco Pasqua, who has cerebral palsy and is a motivational speaker and actually has done some work with AMI.
Oh, yeah, he's on our
still
show every couple of Tuesdays.
Yeah, and he's a great speaker, and he's one of my favorite episodes. Another episode is a quadriplegic neighbor of mine that lives on the same floor in my apartment building where I live, and he's told his story that some people may not think is that exciting. I'm not sure, but I find it really inspirational because he's striving and thriving to do more than have a pity party with his disability. He's trying to get on with doing the best he can with the cards he's been dealt. And hopefully that's what the listener is getting in a somewhat inspirational way, not to just have a cheerleader, but to hear an angle that the individual isn't just sitting back and feeling sorry for the card they've been dealt, you know?
Is that, Stephen, the cure for those who say to you, well, I don't want to necessarily, especially other disabled people, I don't necessarily want to talk disability all of the time. You have a variety of people, a variety of subjects because of these people. We're not shying away from disability, but it's as you said, Mr. 9 years old, it's what now is part of that definition as to who you are. It doesn't define you, but it's part of who you are.
Yeah, and you know, some people don't want to do the show.
Yeah.
Some people have given me rejection. When I was younger, I said to my daddy, how come that guy's got such a good looking woman with him? Well, that's because, he had to ask her out, Steve. If you don't give it a shot, you're not going to get an opportunity. And so I asked people, do they want to tell their story? And people say no, but the people that say yes, well, I'm hopefully hitting a home run, so to speak, to use a game analogy,
You
And
betcha.
I respect people's privacy because some people do not want to share what they've gone through. And I never would force anybody, obviously, to tell their story. And only people that want to share it come on board with me. So right away when they're telling their angle of things, they want to do so, right? Or they wouldn't be there.
What's your dream for the pod?
Well, to stick around, and to have people say, you know what, that helped me. You know what, that was inspirational. You know what, it was interesting. You know what, that was something I didn't know. I just want to do my best, like I've done with everything in my life, just to do my best, because you can't do anything more than that. And if I've done my best and I've made somewhat of a difference, well, that's what takes effort. It's not a big try to complain, right? Complaining is easy. There's no time to complain in life. There's no time. Life goes by much, much too quickly. So let's go forward and do the best we can. And if people recognize that, then that to me is what's fulfilling. That they realize we did the best we could and we put out a nice focused product for an individual to find interesting.
And how do we find the podcast?
It's on any of the podcast catchers, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, you name it, it's out there. Buzzsprout as well, of course. And if you do see or listen, to the show, I hope you can give me a 5-star rating, of course. And word of mouth helps with any business. And I love feedback. If anybody hears the show and they think it can be better, let me know. I can take criticism. I'm a big boy. Let's hear it.
You bet. Stephen, it has been beautiful talking to you, getting to know you, and mostly the passion, the energy, the thorough enjoyment of what you're doing. Thank you for doing what you do, and we'll talk soon.
Feelings likewise, and thanks for the opportunity today. Take care, everyone.
Folks, go and subscribe out there. You can follow the Disability Diaries with Stephen Vine. Give it a follow using your favorite podcast platform. We're looking for members of the disability community to join our AMI research panel. Our research panel guides us out there with every decision we make at AMI, including programming, media consumption, and accessibility. Participants are compensated for all long-form studies. If you want to get some more information or you want to join, please go to ami.ca/panel. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. That's Kelly and Company, of course, at Kelly & Co. AMI. That's on Instagram and Twitter, at Kelly & Co. AMI. We try to put some content out there for you to follow up and give comment to. We appreciate your time. So we know protein is the star of the plate. Yay! But fiber, they say, is the real game changer. Chef Mary Mammoliti is breaking it down for us 6 high-fiber pantry staples that are easy to add to our meals and packed with those benefits. Hey, Mare, welcome back.
It is great to be back.
So
we're talking fiber.
Oh, are we ever? Well, we'll see what comes out from this conversation. Fiber doesn't always get the spotlight. Why should we be paying more attention to it anyway, Mare?
Okay, so there are so many reasons, but first I want to start off. If you've ever peeked into my pantry, you might be surprised. There are no fancy, hard to pronounce ingredients, just everyday staples that make me feel great. So they keep my meals balanced, and most importantly, they help me get enough fiber. So getting in enough protein, like you mentioned, it's what everyone is talking about. And we always hear about protein, but fiber?
Yes.
That's the real unsung hero here, because it not only does fiber keep your digestion running smoothly, but it also helps keep you full longer, which is what I love, right? I love that it keeps me full. It supports energy levels and it feeds that good bacteria in your gut. And the best part, it's easy to add more fiber to your diet without having to overhaul your entire routine, just by stocking the right pantry staples, which is what we're going to share today.
Okay.
6 high-fiber pantry staples.
It's interesting. Travis Nightingale, our registered nurse, was on the show with me yesterday, and we got into that conversation afterward. People can go about. I shared an article about those foods that, that's a bad food, but that we should be eating more, particularly as we were talking heart health. And again, the magic one we came up with too right off the bat was the potato for so many different reasons. And that was a struggle for me. I've never been a big potato person. So as we go down this list, I'm very fascinated. And really, Mary, thank you for bringing this up, because when we get into our nutrition conversations with Julia on Mondays, it's really difficult to know what helps one vitamin, one nutrient, whatever, what you should eat to help something get better processed through your body, how much of something, and all that kind of thing. So these are wonderful quantifying conversations. Okay, 6, where do we start?
6. And I love it because Julia goes through all the health benefits and everything that we need to know that's healthy about it. And I got some of the recipes and the food items for you, which is
all right. Good.
I love talking. First one, Kelly, beans. Beans, I talk about this. This is the MVP of fiber for me. So my pantry is never without a variety of beans. We've got black bean, pinto, kidney, white and red kidney beans. They're also known as cannellini. They're always in my pantry and they're in my go-tos. So they're heart healthy, which is what we like. They're hearty, they're affordable, and they transform into everything from creamy soups, refried beans for those taco nights, or just a bowl of refried beans is always a good time. And they're packed with fiber, so it keeps that digestion smooth, cholesterol in check, and your gut bacteria happy, all while delivering a solid dose of plant-based protein. There's that protein that everyone's talking about. Next one, chickpeas and lentils.
Before we move off of that, just quickly,
tell me.
Is there a bean that you've discovered that is probably more packed the way we would want it to? If someone says, I'm not a big bean person, which one though the most should I be eating? Or would you say eat the one that you like the most, and that solves it?
Eat the one that you like the most, but what I usually recommend to start with is a chickpea.
Okay.
Which is where we're going into right now. Because honestly, the chickpeas and the lentils, they are the fiber duo that I like to have around. So honestly, beans, they're the MVPs. Chickpeas and lentils, they're the dynamic sidekick, is how I like to look at them. Right.
It's like Batman and Robin.
Exactly. So this is their sidekick. This is Robin. The lentils, they cook fast. They bring what's great is 16 grams of fiber per cup to each soup. Curries, spreads, chickpeas, they're equally as impressive at 13 grams per cup of fiber. So whether you blend them into making hummus, roast them for that crunchy snack, or even toss them into some pasta or salads. I love having pasta and chickpeas.
Me too.
It is just so
maybe not
delicious
necessarily
to me.
pasta, but salads.
Not the pasta for you, but
the salads, it's good. Yeah,
the salads are great. Even to make a bean salad, toss whatever beans you have in your pantry. A little bit of olive oil, a little bit of lemon, freshly squeezed lemon juice. It just, some spices, some herbs, whatever you want. It's just so good and so fresh. And it's filling, it's satiating. Okay. Next one, oats.
Yes.
Oats are big for me. Do you like oats?
I this is the one I keep saying I want to do more with. I don't, because I love it and would and should. It's the one starter that I'll say, oh God, oats I should do more with, and don't. Mary, sell me some more on it.
Okay. So this is what I call the breakfast staple that loves your heart. This is why I like oats. There's so many great benefits of it, but I'm all about overnight oats. This is for those busy mornings. You don't have time to prep anything. You get that ready, put them in the fridge, and you can pre-prep those and get a couple ready for each morning. Baked oatmeal, which is also good for meal prep. You bake it up, cut it up into squares, eat that the next day, whatever. Steel cut oats. Those are always great. That's when I need something that's extra satisfying. Plus, sneak them into smoothies. So if you're not big on the texture, the consistency of oatmeal or baked oats. Sneak them into those smoothies. Blend that up. It's delicious. Muffins, you can blend that up into muffins, desserts for that high fiber boost. It really is a great way to start your mornings.
And here's one of those things. It's so ridiculous. You name everything there, and I'm oh yeah. I love it, and I hate that it's probably something I could easily get into my diet and don't enough, Mare. So okay, and so many good ideas for people, even to make sure you get more than that morning dose of it.
And if you're not one to prep it yourself, they have premixes that you can buy and just add the liquid that you want. Just check the sugar content. So make sure to check the ingredients on that. Okay. But definitely they have that pre-cut out there. And whether it's steel cut or rolled oats, you do you. Whatever. I mean, rolled oats cook faster than steel cut, so depending on the time you have.
Okay.
Nuts and seeds. I love nuts and seeds. They're tiny but mighty. I absolutely love them. It's kind of
when you were a kid, didn't you just love those darn sunflower? What do you call them? Sunflower seeds, and the fact that you loved the shell the most because it was coated in salt. You know, real good for us. But it was the thing we would eat so much. Suck on that shell, split it, and eat the nut. It was like eat the.
And now with the high
the
blood
seed.
pressure, I'm staying away from the salt. And
yes.
Remember when we used to do all that?
Oh yeah. When we didn't know any better. That's back in the days of my mom putting salt on apples. Okay, everything. I digress.
It's tasty. It's tasty. I got to give it that. But nuts and seeds, go for the unsalted if you can. And like I mentioned, they really are tiny, but they are mighty. Almonds, pistachios, chia, flaxseed, hemp seeds. My pantry has them all, and it wouldn't be the same without them. I always have them stocked. So they add crunch to salads, creaminess in dressings. Cashews are great for dressings as well. They're high fiber. You can add them to smoothies again, baked goods. So many options when it comes to seeds. And then beyond keeping your digestion on track, they also contain a prebiotic fiber, which helps fuel a healthy gut, which is also key. And we love. Yep. Bonus,
remember the days when pudding. You didn't have the chia and everything like that? I'll let you continue with the chia pudding. Oh my goodness. But remember when flaxseed chia, that wasn't part of the pantry, but they've become so big in the last 25, 30 years.
Yeah. They're always a staple in my pantry now. Everything that I've mentioned here, nuts, hemp seeds, chia, flax, I have them readily available for anything. I mean, even flax, sprinkle it on top of your cereal.
Yeah.
It's tasteless, but it's so good. Chia pudding, it's easy to make. It's great for breakfast, even for a dessert. So I highly recommend keeping some nuts or seeds in your pantry. Even for a quick snack. Grab a little handful, go on your way.
Okay.
Popcorn, this is my weakness, and it's what I call the snack hero. It's just such a weakness for me. I absolutely love it. Whether it's seasoned, whether it's plain, buttered, salted, I love it all. It's just that crunchiness. Do you like popcorn?
Oh, yeah.
Kelly?
Yeah. It's a funny thing because, of course, I like it salt, buttered, so I don't have it, but I try to steer clear of it, but I'm fine even if it's plain.
Even if it's plain. It's just so good. Or pop it with a little bit of maybe olive oil or coconut oil. So good because it infuses into that kernel when you pop it.
Right.
Anyway, see, I can go on forever about popcorn. It's definitely one of my weaknesses. Definitely. Right. So especially when I want something crunchy, popcorn, it saves the day for me. Right. 3 cups
I won't
of
talk
plain
about
popcorn.
I won't talk about this, soaking it in butter and how much I liked it. 3 cups of popcorn.
Right, soaking it in butter, and then you got it at the bottom of the bowl. You ever run your finger at the bottom of the bowl? Am I divulging too much where you just kind of scoop up that butter and that salt? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, 3 cups.
3 cups. Now we're going back to plain popcorn. It delivers 3.5 grams of fiber for under about 100 calories. Don't quote me on this, but this is a ballpark. So it gives you an idea of what you're having in this snack, right? So then plus it's a blank canvas for fun seasonings. So whether, like we mentioned, buttery and salty, spicy with some chili and lime, give that a try. So good. Maybe even sweeten it up with a little bit of cinnamon sugar. It's delicious. Try anything. Mix it up.
All right.
It's great. 6th, last item, prunes. So they're more than just a digestive aid, right? Because we all know that prunes, they have a reputation. But trust me, they are so much more than that natural laxative, right? They're so delicious. You can eat them on their own for a sweet treat, add them in baked goods. Braised dishes is also nice to add a little bit of prune in. And then even desserts, it just adds a little extra sweetness to it. So with 3 grams of fiber per quarter cup, they're a sweet way to support the digestion and overall health. So keep some prunes in the pantry.
Okay. You heard that, ladies and gentlemen.
I say Mary said so.
That's right. Yeah, that's what I say anyway. Any of that stuff, I blame you. Mayor, thanks a lot. As usual, talk to you next week.
Have a great day.
You betcha, Mary. Mary Mammoliti joining us on the program today. She had 6 items we should talk about, folks, when it comes to having in our pantries, making sure we're taken care of. Folks, do me a favor. Check out our podcast, and while you're at it, give us a rating and review if you would. We really could use it, and always love to hear you. We're on your favorite podcast platform of choice. On our next show, low vision artist Linda Todd returns to the show to open our world to her multi-sensory art exhibition, Change and Challenge. A journey through migration, offering tactile components you can reach out to and touch in the wild. Folks, we'll talk to her on the next edition of Kelly and Company. I'm waving at you.
Thanks for tuning in to Kelly and Company. Follow us on all social media, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more.